guys, we're Rachel and Christa, co-founders of Bolder Business Solutions and the Becoming Bolder program, and this is In Full Volume. Each week, we have real, honest conversations about navigating change, redefining what success looks like, and building a life that actually feels good to live, not just one that looks good on paper. So let's turn down those expectations, turn up what really matters, and get into today's conversation. Christa, what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today? Oh my gosh, I am actually really excited for today's conversation. Um, and let's kick it off with this. Let me frame this. Um, I think everybody is familiar with the 80-20 rule. And it applies to a million different things, but the one specific thing that we wanted to talk about today was 20% of your effort will get 80% of your results. And we were correlating that in an earlier conversation this week to strengths. There are, I know many people have taken strength finders. We've utilized it. And what's been so interesting is that once you know your strengths, between your strengths, ideal personality, knowing your brain lead, knowing how your energy works, all of these factors, it's so simple to want to focus almost exclusively on working in that arena of this is where my natural talents are. This is where I gain the most energy. This is where it just feels I could do this all day long. And really, really leaning into your strengths.
Yeah, it's your zone of genius.
Exactly, your zone of genius. But something that just strikes me a little as interesting is what you were sharing earlier this week around there's kind of a hidden cost to focusing almost exclusively on your strengths and why spending the majority of your time in your strengths may not be as beneficial to you as you think it is. That's what we're going to talk about today.
I love that. And yes, that is something that you and I talked about before. And I think it stems from, we were talking about what it felt like for each of us to play in our strengths. And it's no secret that you and I have completely opposite strengths. And that's why we work so well together because we're really just a huge package deal. And so we were talking about how is it when we're operating and when we're playing in our strengths, it feels really good. It's very comfortable for us because we're doing the things that we're naturally good at, the areas where we already naturally thrive. But then it dawned on me, what happens if you're playing 100% of the time in your 20% zone of genius? And then it almost was this realization where I go, that's how you stagnate. That's where growth and discomfort, it it doesn't happen anymore. Because when you spend all of your time playing in this zone of genius, in your 20%, whatever it might look like, you don't challenge yourself much anymore. You're already doing the things that you're good at that fill you up. And that's great. And that absolutely is a good thing. And we want that. But I think one of the things that we don't really talk about is what happens when we're not participating in activities that make us uncomfortable. And one of the things that I really, really want us to do is to start thinking about discomfort as a good thing. Being uncomfortable is it's a good place to be. Be- because when you're uncomfortable, you're challenging yourself. You are pushing your limits. You are identifying areas where you feel like you might need to grow. And I am uncomfortable all the time. So maybe selfishly, this is just me wanting everybody else to feel uncomfortable with me.
Sure.
But but I do think there is power in being uncomfortable. And when we're playing in our 20% in our zone of genius all the time, we're sinking into that level of comfort. We know we're good at what we're doing. And that is really fantastic. And we should spend a lot of our time in our zone of genius, because that's how we can reduce or prevent a lot of the burnout that we feel. If we
Definitely.
spend too Yeah, if we spend too much time being uncomfortable, then it causes us to kind of feel a little bit exhausted. So there is a give and take. I will definitely say there is a give and take between being uncomfortable and playing in your zone of genius. But I think there is inherent power in challenging yourself and pushing yourself, and realizing that there are areas of opportunity instead of a deficit. It's an opportunity for us to challenge ourselves, to grow. And I think you and I are really good examples of that, because we have we have such opposite strengths, so we actually kind of rely on each other to do the areas that to operate in areas where the other person maybe is a lot more uncomfortable. For example, my zone of genius is in strategy, in providing solutions. And it's a lot in number crunching. It is less in navigating maybe more difficult conversations, which when I started leaning more heavily towards you taking over and navigating some of these difficult conversations in other areas of our lives, it started I started to realize that I stopped challenging myself. This is an area where I'm not naturally gifted. And now, and I look back and I go, that really was kind of a disservice to myself. I stopped challenging my strengths, my abilities. And, you know, then we started having that conversation about what does it look like to start incorporating some of those challenges, and really kind of get ourselves comfortable with being uncomfortable again.
Oh, definitely. Well, and I think for so many people, especially high achievers,
Yeah.
they tend to have they tend to have this all or nothing mentality. High achievers have a tendency to take on more than they should, for a multitude of reasons, based on your wiring and your motivations. But I think more often than not, at least my experience in working with clients for, since 2010, is is that once they were able to determine what their strengths were, yes, they wanted to focus much more on their strengths. But when the next layer of that is not to not challenge yourself, but to find things that challenge you that will help increase and improve your strengths. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
yeah, I love that.
it's not, okay, I need challenged. I'm going to intentionally go do something that I absolutely hate, that is absolutely not in alignment with how I'm wired. I am not going to attempt to run anything with the finances of our company. You're welcome. And it's because would it be challenging? Yes. Would it be beneficial? No, it wouldn't. But me learning to navigate some of the other pieces of running a business, the social media aspect, learning more about SEO, things like that. I don't necessarily love them. They help me, that what they do by learning that is I'm learning more about people, which is helping me become an even better communicator, which is helping me be better at what I do naturally. So I think that there is this little fine line of yes, we're saying challenge yourself, but do it in a way that makes sense. Don't just go pick the hardest thing or the thing that you don't want to do. Try to find something that can help elevate what you're already good at.
I love that. And I really love that you brought that up, because yes, I think there's a very important distinction, and there should be some clarification to what we're talking about. It's right. We're not saying, go do the thing that you hate. No, don't do that. what we're doing is we invite you to ask yourself two questions. One, is this challenging for me? And two, is it beneficial for me to embark on this challenge? Those two questions right there, I think, are extremely important to ask yourself, because that's where you can start growing and kind of living with that discomfort, but the good kind of discomfort, which is the one that helps you learn different skills, or maybe, expand your knowledge and your ability to navigate other kinds of conversations, scenarios, whatever it might be. There is inherent power in learning to navigate your own discomfort.
Definitely. And one of the things that I have found so incredibly beneficial, um, it was just this wonderful byproduct of of our partnership. And I've seen it in others. I've seen it in others, but now that we've experienced this, it's just absolutely fascinating to me, and something that I would recommend to anyone in general, but in particular high achievers, business owners, CEO, people in management, whatever, anybody that is in any type of leadership role. I'll call it that. Anyone in any type of leadership role. And that is intentionally finding someone whose strengths are very different from yours and allowing yourself to learn from them, not to become them, not to try to turn your weaknesses into strengths. But I've noticed, this is just, byproduct is the only word I can think of to describe it, is you and we're kind of starting to act a little bit like each other. Like I have noticed, and you mentioned it too, so I'm validated in this. I am starting to be a little more strategic in things.
We have turned into an old married couple. Essentially,
Yeah,
that's what we
okay.
are. We are an
You're
old
not wrong.
married.
You're not well, half of us is old, but whatever. Yeah. Um, but it's just been it's been fun because there are elements of the way that I think, the way that I, I process things, and the things that fall into what are my strengths, that I'm seeing little glimmers of it in you, in our conversations, and vice versa. That's been interesting.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that as much as I have?
Now that you bring it up, I think I've noticed it, but I haven't really been able to put words to it. And now that you've brought it up, it's like, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what it is this is how we've identified how different our strengths are. And it has allowed for us to really start having conversations about how we can learn and benefit from one another. I mean, even for myself, and just watching you navigate social media or marketing, and learning just how you take your natural strengths and you have applied it in a lot of different areas in the business. I have learned how to do that for myself, and it's uncomfortable, but I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying pushing myself just a little bit further to, you know learn more about how these strengths that come so naturally to you, how can I start incorporating that just kind of in my life, but in a way that makes sense for me. I still get to operate in my 20%, but I get to have little sprinkles of other kinds of skills and strengths that I don't think I really would have had this kind of opportunity had I not really spent as much time as I have with you.
Exactly. Well, and I think another benefit that can come from that is it can make when you're intentionally challenging yourself, working alongside someone, and I'm not suggesting you have to be joined at the hip, basically, like you and I are, although it's super duper fun. Um, it's, no complaints here, but not that we're suggesting that, not that I'm suggesting that, but being able to have that person that you are spending time with, whether you are both in leadership together or whatever. What I think has been really interesting for me is the things that have been so challenging because you think so differently than I do. I it makes it a little bit simpler to navigate the challenging parts of that and to be able to have that back and forth of seeing it through your perspective, my perspective, our individual experiences, personalities, qualities, strengths, etc., has made a lot of the more difficult things that I am stretching to learn and navigate. It's made it a lot less painful. Just because I get that other perspective, it's been incredibly beneficial. It's interesting to me, and I absolutely love the fact that this relationship that flourished into a business, it just keeps getting more and more fun. Even on the days
Yeah.
where I want to pull my hair out, it's like I still would not do this.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me how it's evolved.
Absolutely. And I think because we have developed that kind of relationship and that trust too. I think that's a huge
Definitely.
element of it too. It makes navigating whatever changes or challenges that we're facing, it's a lot less daunting. And it almost has it's not almost. It definitely has increased my confidence in myself, in the way that I make decisions, and in the way that I present myself to other people because the we have navigated that space where we are able to challenge each other and to learn from each other and kind of stretch our own capabilities. It has absolutely led into developing that confidence to navigate into the unknown and really kind of barrel towards uncertainty with a level of faith and confidence that I previously never experienced.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that so much. Question for you.
I
It's
might have
still
an answer.
percolating. I suspect you will. It's percolating. Um, when you think about, okay, no, I'm going to ask it this way. Um, when you think about the difference between our strengths,
Mhm.
what was the most surprising?
The most surprising difference?
Yeah. Or unexpected. That's maybe a better word.
I think maybe the most unexpected difference that I saw was on paper, our strengths are completely different. We refer to ourselves, I'm a very left brainer person, you are a very right brain person. So we think and see the world very differently. And on paper, there is it wouldn't make sense that you and I would be good friends.
Yeah, yeah,
Just because
actually, yeah.
it seems as if maybe we wouldn't really get along or we wouldn't be able to see eye to eye on a lot of things on paper. But in reality, and this is the most unexpected thing and pleasantly surprising thing for me is we get along swimmingly. And it's because even when your strengths are completely opposite, like ours are, they're still complementary. They still balance each other out and influence each other in such a way where there is no difference of opinion. Well, there is. We do have differing opinions on a lot of
We do.
things, but
We do.
the way that we can communicate and the way that we navigate the world and the challenges that we face together, it's it's because I think it's because we utilize our strengths to complement one another instead of act against each other, which seems kind of counterintuitive if you were really to kind of spell it all out. Somebody who's extremely relational like you, and then somebody like me who's very strategic in our ways of thinking, it doesn't really seem like maybe there would be a lot of common ground or that we might be able to see the world in the same way. And in a lot of ways, we do. It's just two sides of the same coin, really. That's what it is we still come together naturally with our strengths. They're not in opposition. They actually they coincide with each other really, really seamlessly.
Yeah, and
What what about you? What would you say is probably the most surprising thing?
um, in a similar vein, I
Mhm.
think what was so surprising, okay, I'm just going to say it, when this harebrained idea of, hey, let's bring together these two very differing personalities, and this sounds like fun, and let's build a company around our experience, our expertise, our strengths, etc. um i I think the most surprising thing to me was how it just blended together. I really
Yeah.
thought we would have a lot more give and take. um I
Yeah.
think that surprised. I really, really honestly believed that there, and here's the thing, I think that's just human wiring. I think that when we are working with, or potentially whether it is, a coworker, or a client, whatever that might look like, when we are working with somebody who is so incredibly different than we are, from that logic versus emotion perspective, I think I think more often than not, it's kind of human nature to assume dangerously that you're not going to see eye to eye. You're not going
Yeah.
to agree, and that you're going to have to convince somebody of your perspective. And I see it all the time. I navigated this for years and years and years working with clients. I found myself almost like a mediator at times, having to, I would sit down, I would sit down with the director personality and a sequencer personality. Even though they're both left brain, they're saying the same thing, but using different words. And, and,
Right.
and I think that's just human nature to make that assumption. But all of that aside, and knowing that, I still was genuinely surprised at just how aligned we were, and how much we believed and thought and wanted the same thing, and watching those conversations unfold until we got it all figured out. That would be it for me.
And that actually um kind of made me think, and now I'm a little curious. When we had this idea for the business, we actually had known each other for over a year by this point, and
Yeah, about a
had
year and a half.
yeah, so we had really kind of gotten to know each other over time anyway. And um when you first met me, did you do you feel like that sentiment is still the same, where even when we first met, knowing that we have very, very different personalities, I think very, very left brain and you're very right brain. Do you feel that did you also do you feel like that was something that we had to work towards, or was this something that was kind of seamless from the beginning?
Somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
because I know me, and I am an open book. I'm an open
Yeah.
book. And so I found myself intentionally holding back, probably for the first 6 months after I met you. And
Interesting.
we wonderful conversations, enjoyed being with you. We worked beautifully together. That was never a question, but it was, how much of the real me could she really handle at this point?
Well, and I wonder if a lot of that was kind of based off of that assumption of that a lot
It
of
totally
yeah,
was, and I know
a lot
better.
and that's okay. It's human nature. We go ahead and we do make assumptions, and we also all know what happens when we assume. But
We did.
I did the same thing. I mean, when knowing who I am as a person, I think I also made that same assumption too. And it was interesting because I remember it very similarly, where, we naturally clicked right from the beginning, but it wasn't until both of us kind of had this, can you handle it? Can you handle it? And we had this almost, okay, all right.
I think she gets me. think she really
Yeah.
gets me.
I think it's okay. And I think once we started realizing that the assumptions that we had about each other and the way that each other think is um once we kind of threw that out the window, then we started having real conversations. I think
Yeah.
that's really what it was is once that
Yeah.
assumption left, we started having real honest conversations and um we started developing that trust.
So, question.
Mhm.
Do you think it's possible that sometimes when we lean heavily into our strengths, we can kind of make ourselves an island?
Oh my goodness. I think absolutely. I think that is a huge I think it's a blind spot that we can absolutely start building for ourselves. Because when we start really leaning heavily into our strengths, which again, not a bad thing. We love our strengths. We love leaning into our strengths, but when you start operating through that lens of only your strengths, I think it absolutely can lend itself towards creating an island. And I think that's just kind of based off of what we experienced, which is we then start making assumptions about how other people live their lives and operate in their strengths. And in order to really start, having other conversations or real deep conversations with other people who have different strengths than you have to build a bridge on that island. So, yeah, I definitely think you can run the risk of building an island and isolate yourself if you lean too heavily into your strengths. For sure. What about you?
And
What do you think?
I think it's, just kind of zooming out and thinking about just past experience that I've had, and I know I can't be the only one, is we tend to gravitate, like attracts like, and so we tend to gravitate
Yeah.
towards people who are more like us.
Hmm.
And I think that that's not a bad thing. That isn't a bad thing at all. But what I love that kind of comes with this challenging yourself to not just stay in this comfortable space of this is what I'm great at, this is what I do, this is how I'm wired, this is my personality, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to hang out with people that are like me. Intentionally stepping outside of that to challenge yourself, to learn new skills that will support what you're already doing, not to completely throw you off base, but to support, learning new skills, actively seeking out new friendships with people that are different, that think differently. Just having conversations with you is it I was just going to say is challenging, but what I mean is that you challenge me. I
That's
knew that
okay.
was going to sound really bad before the words came out, so I figured I'd stop myself.
Most
But
people say that about talking with me. I understand. You're in the majority.
it's fun. It's really fun to be in a conversation with somebody, not even necessarily to debate or to argue. That's not what I'm saying, but to have a conversation with somebody who challenges you to think differently, even if you agree. That is what I think is fun. Is we agree on things, but you see it differently. So now I want to use that filter so I understand why you believe what you believe, even though it's aligned with me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I that We have a lot of conversations where we are talking to the other person and then one of us will respond, "Yes." And then we share our points of view and it's so enlightening because it's and also validating too to have somebody who I know is who sees the world very differently than I do, who also gives me a better worldview. I mean, I think all too often when we start building ourselves this island that we kind of um, create when we are operating only in our strengths, it means that we don't really have a good worldview. We're not seeing the rest of the world, and you having this completely opposite point of view in a lot of areas helps develop that more holistic worldview for me. And I hope I do the same for you, where it's like,
Oh,
okay,
definitely.
so this is how I can eliminate the biases that I have, maybe helps me see um, things that I might have missed. I get to learn more about areas that I haven't spent time learning about, and really help develop some of those weak points in my thought processes, which I think is super powerful.
Definitely. And I love that this is something that we get to bring into our coaching programs, because
Yeah.
getting to sit down and have these conversations with clients that, whether they're right brain, left brain, it doesn't matter. They're working with both of us. And so
Yeah.
it's created some really fun conversations. And and I think it's really fun because then we get to participate in something really cool when you get to see the wheels start to turn and the connections start to be made. Because I think it's really easy, for high achievers. They kind of get in the zone, and
Hmm.
sometimes you,
Yeah.
you gotta get out of the zone for just a little bit, just for a little bit, so that you can find you can see other people's perspective. You can look at things from a different viewpoint. You can have different conversations and entertain different ideas. Um, Being in the zone is great until it isn't. If it
Yeah.
becomes something that you do.
Yeah. And what I really love, in addition to all of that, yes, and what I really love about how we get to bring this into our coaching program is that we we still get to challenge people's way of thinking, but there's still that element of safety where there's someone in that conversation who says, this person thinks like me. I see the world just the same way that they do. We have similar conversations. We use the same words. And, so you still almost get that safety net while you're challenging yourself. It's like learning how to ride a bike with training wheels. You're pushing yourself and you're challenging yourself, but there's still that element of safety that's built into it as well. And I love that we get to provide both that challenge, but also that safety and trust along with it as well.
Most definitely. Oh my gosh. Um, oh, we could probably spend the rest of the day talking about this. This has been a really
Yeah.
fun conversation. Some things popped up with for
Yeah.
both of us that were like, oh, I didn't know we were going to go this direction today. But that
Right.
makes it fun. That always makes it fun. So thank you everybody for joining us today, here on In Full Volume. And if there's anything in this conversation, anything that you heard from Rachel or myself, that I don't know, maybe gave you something to think about, sparked some ideas, made you want to ask some questions, we would love to have you share that in the comments below. If you are navigating a change and are possibly wanting to connect, to see if this is something we could support you in, or to just be able to connect with us and get a little bit of feedback, just click on the link in the comments and you can schedule a free call with us and take your first steps towards becoming bolder. Last but not least, if you want to hear more conversations about becoming bolder and building a life that feels like your own, please go ahead and subscribe to our weekly podcast. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon. And until next time, keep showing up in full volume. Bye, guys.